Stories make the world go round. Whether it's genuine trash, a means to an end, or one of the best narratives you've ever had the pleasure of being exposed to, an impactful tale can really stick in your soul. But a story is basically nothing without its characters. And characters are nothing without a world. They can't just exist in an empty black void. Most of the time. They need a setting. They need solid ground to touch with their tootsies. However, in very rare circumstances, an exceptionally good world can push a stories as fleshy meat puppets to the sidelines and really steal the show. Project Moon City, a post-apocalyptic dystopian metropolis, is one of those set pieces in fiction that I would say has outgrown its own characters and relevance. I'm going to assume you're at least familiar with Project Moon if you clicked on this video. If not, I'll keep this description of 40 words or less. City is a country-sized, city, that houses the last known remnants of humanity in its walls, and is split into 25 alphabetically named districts, each one run by a greedy corporation. That was 33 words. Z-Corp is gone. Where? Who knows? This is the chronological order to experience the 3 games and 3 web novels / comics in, and in case that tiny little synopsis piqued your interest, this is your final spoiler warning. This video will contain spoilers for the entire franchise, both visual and story related, since the structure of this video is basically just going to be about the background art present in these games. I will bring up the cutscene art when need be, but there's a lot of teensy details I feel get a little overlooked. This series is best when you stop and smell the roses. So, please leave a like if you enjoy and consider subscribing for more Project Moon content? I'm talking about walls here. Let's get started. But this time, not with what you may think. I usually like to begin these videos by starting with Lobotomy Corporation, the first game in the series, and work my way up to Limbus, the latest. But since we're talking about City as a whole here, we'll work our way to LobCorp for once. Instead, I want to tackle the most general area that we can, the backstreets. City in its normal state is an industrial mess of tight corridors and monolithic buildings. It's all drenched in 50 shades of grey.
We'll get around to me being impregnated.
I want to use the word lifeless, but I can't, because despite looking like abandoned Soviet-era housing, the backstreets of City are filled with life. So the way City works for the uninformed is that each sector, also known as a corporation, is split into 2 areas. The Nest, which is normally a walled off chunk of the sector where the main corporation resides and does their work. These areas 9 times out of 10 have pretty good living conditions and are mostly populated with the middle to higher class workers. But the rest of that sector, a good 50 to 60, hell even 70% of it is just free real estate. It's squatter junction, baby. No such thing as a homeless person in the backstreets when there's alleyways galore. Almost no one who lives in the backstreets does so on their own accord. They're people who can't afford to live in nests or have been outcasted in one way or another. And those who do choose to live in the backstreets are usually the reason the other people dread the place. A theory I have is that the backstreets and their design were heavily based on the real-life walled city of Kowloon. Kowloon was a Chinese ghetto built just outside of Hong Kong. The entire city was a densely constructed labyrinth, multiple floors and winding paths made a little world inside of our own. Kowloon was relatively safe to live in. Just about everyone in the industrial catacombs were there because they got screwed over by the Chinese government. So a mutual respect and understanding kept life going as normal. But obviously, given that it's such a secretive area not governed by a government and that there was no sort of police enforcement, it led to Kowloon being a grungy hotbed of smuggling and black market deals. The living conditions between Kowloon and the backstreets are obvious. But thankfully, there was no man-melting cyborgs or sadistic furries in China when it was around. Or maybe there was, we don't know. But what I mainly want to bring to light is just how compact City is. It's all alleyways and halls. None of these streets look like they can really facilitate a car. Just rooms upon layers for the sake of them, and cables. Oh baby, there's so many delicious cables. City has layers, man. There's levels to this place. There's an entire network of underground tunnels as seen in the Full Stop office's reception. That's one thing that's only been a little explored in City. We have underground facilities and bunkers and stuff like that, but we've never actually explored the literal actual underside of City. I heard a theory way back in the day when we got our first ever map of City. And still to this day, the best map of City, I will hear no objections. Ezra is the best distortion detective girl, no contest. It was a quick one-off comment, but someone once proposed that Z-Corp is literally underneath City, and that it's an entire underground citadel far below one of the other corporations. Possibly A-Corp, possibly Y-Corp, we don't know. But that's always stuck with me, and it's been my headcanon for Z-Corp's absence ever since I've read it. It's either that or Z Corp was just obliterated without a trace. But it's much cooler to think of it as a subterranean district. I mean, someone's gotta mine all the resources for the other corp somehow, these don't just build themselves. Compared to Runa and a teensy bit of LobCorp, Limbus's backstreet art loses the Kowloon feel just a small bit, and instead tries to make it look a lot more rickety. The houses are made of rusty sheets of metal bolted together, and it looks pretty derelict, more post-apocalyptic than dystopian. The backstreets are a lot more slum-like here, more suburban. Kanto 2 throws you right back into the walled city's influences with J-Corp. Bright lights don the whole district. It's the nightlife backstreet with casinos and all sorts of gambling as far as the eye can see. When the sinners find their way to the pawn shop early on in the Kanto, the alleyways they traverse portray more traditional Chinese architecture, with the red tiled roofs and circular doorways, if the Hanzi on the signs wasn't a dead giveaway. The inside of the pawn shop where the sinners conspire their heist is cluttered with all sorts of trinkets and doodads you'd expect to find in such a place. Mismatched cases of jewellery are strewn between shelves mixed with jarred insects, scorpions to be exact, and what looks like intestines? Now, I don't want to go slandering Mr. Harrison, but I think it's more than safe to assume that some of these pickling jars have human parts in them. Not saying all, because I'm pretty sure that we don't have a massive blue prism in ourselves, but it does kind of look like a heart. Maybe some sort of commonplace creature we haven't seen yet. Unless this guy was a proper monster hunter when he was younger, that would actually be hype. It paints a pretty grim picture from backstreet life when you could just walk into any old pawn shop and just sell some poor oaf's insides for a quick buck. In the centre, under a spotlight, lies what I think is meant to be a Chinese lunar calendar, though I thought they only had 12 sections to frame the 12 different animals in, and the one in the game features 14 fractions. Maybe I'm making an uneducated observation here, or maybe it's a deliberate choice to differentiate cities' cultures further from its real-life counterparts, but I honestly don't know what's going on here. A clearer view of the city above shows how concentrated J-Corp is. We haven't really gotten a chance to see the roofs of these urban blocks yet, so it's a nice way to portray the sheer scale. Maybe a bit of a stretch, but this image also portrays a cute little microcosm of city itself, with the abandoned war-torn grey outskirts acting as a natural barrier to the brightly lit haven of the centre casino. To double up with this art is the one from way later in the Kanto, when Rodion is getting a flashback. It shows a purge of sorts happening on the icy cold streets below, the only colours visible being the frozen road besmirched with scarlet blood, and the distant unreachable light of the casino. Unless it's just a fire and I'm totally wrong, but shh, the casino is cooler. Let me give this game some credit. And what a casino this Temple of Greed is. I stated it in my Limbus Year 1 review, but one of my favourite things in video games is being able to see the end of your journey from the get-go. It adds a sense of progression and build-up that can't be matched by just stumbling onto the big bad. This entire Kanto keeps the casino lit up in the background art. Whether you're in a fight or just in a cutscene, it is there, a constant reminder of where you're headed. This art of the rooftops feeds my need for a stealth action game so bad, you don't understand. Sniper Elite and Metal Gear Solid 5 do this so much. This is I can't even describe the feeling it gives me. It's just, if you know, you know. Kanto 2 gets hated a lot for its story, which I'm not going to talk about here since this isn't the time nor place for it, but what I'm not even going to contest is that it has the second best presentation of any of the Kantos. We will get to the best one later. Everything in its background art was meticulously placed to add a sense of intrigue and adventure that I think is only really matched by Kanto 5's Ocean. But what I'm saying is that aside from the brief yet still delicious time you spend in the outskirts in Kanto 1, Kanto 2 is the most city that City has felt in this game. The interior of the casino itself features some striking palette changes from the usual browns and greys. It's just as colourful on the inside as the out. Floor after floor, this deadly arcade is teeming with a populace willing to gamble their life away. And you know what? If I went to a casino and they had little fishies under the counter, I think I'd take those odds too. We know of J-Corp's deal. We know their deadly not-so-secret secret. That what I said wasn't a figure of speech. People are literally dealing their lives away in poker games that might as well be Russian roulette. And that the Hanafuda office's literal job is to coach said games, to monitor them and to make sure that no one plays foul and they're all in a gentleman's agreement. I say all this to point out how eerily calm the casino is portrayed through the art. This should be the hub of all the psychotic terror, yet it's so normalized and everyone is just here to flick some chips. Now yes, I know that not every game has to have such high stakes in the district, but there's gotta be a few people around here doing something risque, and yet they're all so calm, it's scary. But as the floors rise, so does the tension. On floor 3, there's more obvious blood splatters on the tables, and every roughneck is brandishing a blade of some description. I'd say that there probably a little more open to it up here. It's a nice touch that the lights get dimmer too as the patrons get increasingly more brutal. Adds a tinge of uneasiness and continues to grow on the whole background adventure that this canto is trying to tell, of getting to the top of that damn tower. It does raise the question though, where are the Jong office in this canto? But I'm just going to chalk that down to either a plot hole or just plain forgetfulness. I haven't much to comment on the dungeon for this chapter, but I will glaze the ice castle a little bit because holy shit, I remember seeing this in the original Limbus trailer and getting so hyped. Since City was so large before Project Moon got really indecisive with its actual size, seriously, there's so much conflicting info that this has to be a topic for its own video. I was really holding out hope for different parts of the metropolis to have entirely independent climates, but much to my dismay, it wasn't an actual place in City. But even as a figment of Rodion's imagination, it's spectacular. As you should already know though, this castle isn't really a castle, it's an entire abnormality, and though you can't really tell from the outside, the inside of Baba Yaga is gnarly. This battle art appears for all of probably 30 seconds in your playthrough, but it's one that gets better every time I look at it. The solid glacier walls are worn with time and suspend gargantuan intestines within themselves. Trapped with those nerves and guts are the corpses of some of its victims, their exact moment of death forever preserved in the floor of the entrance hall. Some Donnies even look like they nearly clawed their way out, but that didn't end so well. The closest we get to this design elsewhere is in Snow Queen's fight from Ruina. Her throne is strikingly similar to Baba Yaga, and I'm pretty sure they may have some lore together that I'm forgetting about, or that they're like aberrations or something. I faintly remember something like that floating around in the launch days of Limbus, so if there's any lore experts who know, please correct me in the comments. That's enough Backstreets and Abno talk for now. City isn't all criminal activities and desolate wastelands. On the other end of the stick, sitting comfy in colourful safe communities that actually have some sort of government, for better and for worse, are the nests. And let's start with the good old main nest of the series, Lobotomy Corporation. Oh, this is no different from the Backstreets. Being a smidge disingenuous, L-Corp only looks like this because it's a quite literal war-torn slice of the concrete jungle. This shit had a rough time, and its colour scheme is no different from those of the Backstreets. I appreciate all the lights on in the apartments though. This picture makes City seem colossal, with there being seemingly no end to the towers upon towers. And with this many lights being lit up, it really does give that feel of people just trying to get on with their life, unfazed by the happenings of those at the top. Deeper into the heart of L-Corp's nest is a far more grisly scene. Spears line the streets with half-rotten corpses decorating the skyline. Remnants of the smoke war left for the crows. In the background, amidst the fog, stands the library. Framed in this light, it makes it seem like an eldritch horror, an inevitable fate for those who dare approach. While it's not background art that's in the game, I still want to include this iconic picture of the library in a nightscape. The pure nostalgia this image causes me is crazy. The library is ugly. It's a malignant tumour on the city, growing out its roots in every which way just to fill up more space. The floors are uneven and the whole building looks like it's bolted together with sheets of metal, much like the slumburbs from before. Yet despite its size, City still looks inconceivably big. More lights in the apartments too. You know, for an entire nest that just went through the bloodiest war in the city's history, and just lost the biggest energy supplier that anyone ever knew, they don't seem too wrapped up about the cause he lives. You think there's a Dolan City? The library's design reminds me a lot of the Nerve Tower from the old 90s PS1 game Baroque, both of which serve as almost religious landmarks that appear from thin air in their own worlds. Seemingly impenetrable fortresses rooted directly into the earth itself, its entire being compounded from a mix of earth and steel. I don't think Baroque was even known about during the library's designing process since, well, the game was a Japan exclusive for decades and is also extremely niche. But this is the only time I'll ever get to gush about Baroque, so let me have this. The light pages spilling out of the base floor adds a nice aesthetic touch, though I'm not sure how it works practically speaking. I suppose it's just the library trying to increase its effective range, because as we see in the Blue Ensemble camp, the pages form a swamp of light behind them. Also on the topic, these tents are teensy. They are so goddamn small, and for what? Surely budget constraints weren't that bad, man. I used to be a Boy Scout, and I can assure you that this is suboptimal camping. I mean, think about poor Greta and Tanya. Tanya is so damn tall that her legs probably just shoot out the front. And Greta? Poor girl probably uses the tent as a blanket. Argalia, you're a shit boss. If you had time to slap your insignia onto every single tent, then you had time to make them bigger. Greta sister, sue this man. Lobcorp may be an eye full of apocalyptic grey ruins, but it's just about the only nest that's so hard done. K-Corp seems to be the most normal place to live in City, as of yet. But K-Corp is it's kind of boring in that regard. That it's just a high-tech cyber city, which, while cool, doesn't really pop out as much. It is given that we needed a median nest anyways, so it serves its job as that, but I just wish there was a little more flair. The art is still stunning as per usual, and the labs are definitely the strongest part here. They're cold, desolate labyrinths that make every room look samey yet distinct. The colour choices of white mixed with green are an unusual pair, but it helps everything really pop, especially in the battles with how darkly coloured the K-Corp guards are. Samjo's lab has a cabinet filled with all sorts of useless awards and certificates. It's a small touch, but I think it adds to how ego-fueled these scientists really are. That in the centre of all their research lies a golden chicken leg statue, because that's what science is really about. I'm not saying I wouldn't put it on display either. You kidding me? If I had a golden chicken leg, that shit would be front and centre on the mantelpiece. The drumstick statue is also the only one untouched when the lab gets raided. It's too damn powerful, that thing is cursed. To further add on to the popping palette of Canto 4 is the code purple alarm, which bathes most of the hall in a violet glow. I wish the purple was a little more aggressive, but as is, it does its job as eye candy. At the end of Canto 4, when all the sinners are celebrating in a restaurant somewhere, this art really evokes that Kowloon feeling that's so overwhelmingly present in Ruina. This place is the definition of a hole-in-the-wall restaurant, hidden in some random ass alleyway littered with dirt scraps. The main street is only portrayed by a luminescent green glow. Onto a better corporation, and the objectively best one, Warp! Now, I just spent about half of the last video glazing this corporation to hell and back, but it deserves every last compliment I throw its way, and then some. K-Corp focused on having a high-tech city while still trying to keep it looking somewhat close to real life. But Warp? Nah, they went full sci-fi, otherworldly city with this nest. The entire corp is bathed in more Arctic blue filters than fucking Twilight, but it works. I think it's great to just give every location a distinctive colour, as it helps them build more of an identity aside from just their architecture. Of which, this place is bonkers. The skyscrapers here have all sorts of weird abstract tower-like shapes while connecting to one another with indoor bridges. The train station has monolithic arches to signal the platform numbers, and considering how big we know warp trains are, that's fucking massive for the uninformed. It's spine-chilling to think just how tall the arches are. Square neon signs seemingly project either train information or advertisements to the residents. There's a lot of them scattered in the background also, so it's safe to assume it's a mixture of both. Ruina did such a stellar job at conveying in human size in all its wide shots. Look how tiny everyone is compared to the technological wonders around them. Human life is already insignificant in City, so to have the size of your gargantuan surroundings reinforce that on the daily must be soul-crushing, but also oddly captivating. The actual offices of the warp crew are much more lifeless than the station itself, as to be expected of course. They're basically just boardrooms with glass panels all around, reminding you on each one just where you are, you know, in case you forgot. The big blue light in the middle is a screen. It's currently projecting the inside of a warp train to the cleanup crew, so why don't we go and take a quick ride? Check it out for ourselves. 10-second journey in and out. To avoid another hour-long yap session about how much I utterly obsess over Warp Corp, I'll try my best to keep this part brief and concise, but man, the warp train interior is engraved into my retinas. The insides of the train keep the same blue neon light and harsh black steel look as the rest of the nest, and it's missing a lot of what you'd really expect a normal train to have. There's no overhead luggage, and the walkway down the middle seems comically large, with only a few seats either side all tightly scrunched together. Warp trains are advertised to only take 10 seconds to travel across the entire city using their patented technology, so I suppose it's pretty excusable to cut out such useless services like designated luggage space. You can just stick side by side with your suitcase anyways. Ruina's unique pastel art style really shows off its Sunday best here. The way every colour melts into each other but still forms a sharp and coherent image is something to be admired. It's so gorgeous. And this goes for all the backgrounds in this game too. When characters are in the forefront during a cutscene, they just pop without looking too out of place. The characters are all coloured in the same pastel-y look, so it all comes together to form one of the most original art styles I've ever had the pleasure of seeing. Those chairs look kinda dirty though. If you're paying a literal arm and a leg for a trip, I'd expect some clean seats. Well, as we all, hopefully, know, the warp train doesn't in fact last 10 seconds. It lasts for about 2,000 years, and the denizens of our lovely locomotive in Ruina decide to make it feel like home. Lovetown is the peak of the franchise, and I mean just look at this! When compared directly side by side with normal warp train art, this is harrowing, but it's so gorgeous. I'm mostly treading over the same ground as my horror video, but Lovetown is stomach turning. The name literally being intestines strung up by Christmas lights, and the various strewn body parts really helps make that analogy literal. The fight backdrop backdrop of Lovetown is where the detail gets bumped up to 11. The colours are much more vivid here, showing that the insides of the train are rather dark, and the red of the blood contrasts a lot more against the cold greys than the previous image let on. The passengers here are quite horrifying, especially with context, but I want to give 2 honourable mentions to Fat Ass Baddie and Perpetual Pogman. You guys are the real goats, and when Project Moon fully sells out, I cannot wait for your spin-off Disney Plus show together. I hate to be that guy, but the one in the middle kind of looks like a soy jack. One thing I did forget to mention in the horror one though was this adorable little smiley face in the top right of Lovetown. Oh, he's just so cute. And I know that guy beside it is feeling the Christmas spirit too. Orcorp are Warp's besties. They're Pookie Bear, and the only other person who truly gets the joy in eternal suffering. Orcorp's office layouts look near identical to the neon strip streets of Warp. Makes sense though, considering their technological advance over the other corps. As the private militia of City, it's to be expected that even their boardrooms look like underground bunkers. I'd assume these walls are solid iron by the way they look, and those chairs look seriously uncomfortable. They do wonders for your posture, no doubt, but they'd snap my shrimp ass like a glow stick. What's the light on the table anyways? Because if the screen above is projecting all the information that the leaders need, then we can rule out the table being another screen. So why is it so bright? If the entire table is a light, then that does go kinda hard. Imagine taking a nap and then being woken up because someone turned on the lights and with full force of the sun just hit your eyes point blank. It's good to see Orcorp keeping the spirit of narcissism alive, with its logo unnecessarily plastered all over the walls. With Warp, it was at least sort of fair. This is a train station. Any old Joe could wander in here by accident. But this is a military complex. I know you house child soldiers, but this is a little egregious, Nikolai. Oh, wait, you're like 80 years old, so they probably have it up so you don't forget. 48? You're 48 years old? God damn, stress got you good. Pierre also has white hair in her prime at 34, though I think that's just genetic. Crayon is like, what, 9? And she has white hair too? There's also people with natural blue hair and green hair. Man, City has some wacky hairlines. Anyways, that's a topic for another day. To top off our tirade of Twisted Titans is the namesake of the very first game. That's right, baby, it's back to Lobotomy Corporation with our sorry asses. We were gone for all of 5 minutes. Lobotomy Corporation, when compared to its 2 younger siblings, has the most unique visual flair of the series. While Runa, Distortion Detective, and eventually Leviathan and Limbus leaned into a more realistic pastel style for its characters and settings, Lobotomy Corporation, and by extension Wonderlab, are sharp. But I think that helps it stand out a lot more from its successors. You can harp on all you want about how much you love Hod, but you try and hug that girl and stitches is all you're gonna get. The entire game takes place from within the workplace walls, so you get a lot more time to sink in these environments. The facility is broken up into 10, technically 11 separate areas, each of which serving a different purpose in gameplay and story. The very first you unlock is Malkuth's sector, also known as the Control Team. As can be expected from the tutorial room, there's really not anything too distracting happening here. A complex web of monitors sprawls across the back wall, and during cutscenes they are blanked out a turquoise colour, but during the days they're filled in with blurry stretched images of various abnos. The screens are surrounded by external pipes, transferring what looks to me like enkephalin in the alpha version, but in the modern LobCorp, it looks more like water. This could have been a conscious change to not show the funny green liquid too early on in the story, though I feel like it would have worked as a nice little, hey, I know what that is now moments in rewinds. The main thing to see here though is that tree of life on the wall. Some really nice foreshadowing on how the facility expands throughout the course of the story. Off to the side room, there's more high-tech sci-fi screens that all look like they fit a control team, but I can't help but notice that 3D map on the table. What is this? Is this L-Corp as in the nest? Or is it a scan of the city as a whole? I feel like a scan of City is a tad too ambitious, but even if it is just the sector of L-Corp, then I wonder what the biggest towers are. The size of buildings has almost never ever been mentioned in the franchise, but like, Nest real estate must be mad valuable. If the main corp isn't building and using all these skyscrapers, then who is? It'd help to identify them if they weren't all just solid grey. Seriously, how cheap is electricity in this damn place? It's a world full of hot cannibals, interdimensional travel, and SCPs. And the cheap power is the most unrealistic part. Calling City a dystopia, my ass. Yesod's floor, better known as the Information Team, have a much more stark purple colour scheme. This is where the sci-fi screens kinda hit their peak. I mean, these ones are literally floating mid-air, and it doesn't get much more futury than that. The doors are different in the main room also. In fact, every floor has a different looking door. Malkuth's are much more solid looking. While initially I thought this was to ease new players in who think this is just an SCP fan game and reassure them that the staple iron doors will keep them safe. It dawned on me shortly after that these presumably hydraulic powered doors are only present on the top floor because they act like a last bastion if all else goes wrong. The only surefire way to make sure the abnormalities don't escape if the workers fuck up. Yesod's are lighter looking, but keep that Star Warsy future feel. The room below Yesod's main features a moon hologram sitting on some clouds. Either this is a cheeky nude. Either this is a cheeky nod to Project Moon themselves, or this is meant to have something to do with the abnormality void dream, much like how Big Bird is present in the control room. I hope it's the latter, as it makes this facility feel actually lived in. Even if you don't have that abno present, it makes sense that the background workers would be tinkering away at any sort of supernatural occurrence they can find. Smack dab in the centre is the elevator, but we're not going down there just yet. Oddly enough, Yesod is one of 2 Sephira to have a different drawing of their main room for their cutscene background, if you don't count Malkuth. What I mean is that usually the dialogue takes place in a stretched, more high-definition version of the exact same PNG scene in gameplay. But Yesod's is different. It's more detailed, and I'm not sure why he gets favoritism, but it's a little odd. Hod's room, the training team, is where LobCorp's art design gets a little more odd. There isn't a back wall like the previous 2 rooms had. This one seems to just be an endless void into a cave behind. A cave populated with what I believe to be temples of sorts? Temples are safe spaces, and Hod's one goal was that she wanted to make everyone happy, so a more literal safe space finding itself physically manifested into her sector makes sense. Some of them scarily more large than others, almost like a city within the facility. This is only the start. The walls are filled with what looks like computer servers, or screens displaying employee names. The doors are much more welcoming here. They don the appearance of regular wooden doors, but with a sci-fi touch-up, and I genuinely do not know what this symbol is. I recognise the female gender symbol in the lower half, but I don't want to make any assumptions in case it holds meaning. So if you know what this is, please tell me, I'd like to know. The closest I could get, thanks to my friend Index Enthusiast, was the symbol of Mercury. It mentions how Mercury represents the mind as well as the life force. Yeah, I suppose the mind, the mental health, all that stuff would fit right in with the training team, and someone wanted to keep people in high spirits. And in the centre of it all is a massive black hole with 2 overlapping wings that float softly up and down. The steam pipes tangle around the supporting columns like wild tree roots trying to dig itself into place. A very apt observation when you look at the Sephira meltdown. Another tree of life dons her wall, this time a bright neon red, almost like a warning sign. It's so blurry, but if you squint really hard, you can somewhat recognise what I believe to be Chessed's cup symbol from Ruina. At least I think this is a cup. It looks like a martini. DeadSec Sector abandons the dull beiges and purples of the other Asaya floors in favour of bright neon green. The main room features a tank in the back filled to the brim with enkephalin, being pumped out by a system of variously shaped pipes tangled around the chamber. In the centre is a terminal donned in uncharacteristically large green thorns grasping around a golden cup. Crowning said cup is a rose. This all looks very artsy, and that fits Netzac to a T, as we'll come to see further. The thorns of the enkephalin rose can be seen protruding from behind the terminal situated on the left wall. They also look to be invading the very panelling of the room. It makes the actual facility seem alive. We're getting to a point in the floor designs where the supernatural begins to merge with the very architecture itself. But before we head further down to the next layer, we must discuss the main room you're going to be staring at for the entire game. The Abnormality Containment Chamber is iconic. Keeping up the running theme of exposed pipes and wires, the chambers where the Abnos are sealed do not change between floors. It's the same structural build for every single Abno in the Codex. Except Apocalypse Bird, I guess, but a big boy needs a big house. There's black and yellow warning tape sectioning off where the Abno stands. It serves as an approximate safety distance. Obviously, this doesn't do jack shit for most Abnos. We love Spider Mud in this household. Backwards Cock covers it with his fat ass, and today Shylock just doesn't give a flying fuck. Why does Reddit stand so close to the screen? Every other Abno, to my knowledge anyways, stands a little above the centre of the room, but Reddit knows. He knows what kind of person you are. The number 27 is plastered on every wall. I'm sure this was a little bit of set dressing added to be like, hey, they number the chambers in universe. But the number doesn't change depending on the Abno. They're all 27. It would be really neat if the number changed to correspond with the Abno within, and I'm curious on why they didn't bother to. Lobotomy Corporation features no 3D models. Everything in the game is comprised of a sprite sheet, even the cutscenes. So it surely couldn't have been tough enough to add a separate number into each Abno sprite sprite sheet and then code it to appear in their chamber. I don't want to downplay game devs since I'm sure it's a million times harder to do than say, but it's a damn missed opportunity. Also, very tiny thought, as awesome as the pipes are aesthetically to add to the underground secret laboratory theme going on, they'd want to be made out of pure titanium because there's abnormalities like melting love who are liquid based. If there was as much as the tiniest crack in the pipe, surely she could just slip some of herself out, or maybe entirely like an octopus. Now, I'm sure they have precautions in place for all that, or maybe they don't. And the latter would fit LobCorp much better, being so uninterested in employee safety that they unintentionally and just uncaringly give the abnormalities another escape route. These cells are big as shit, by the way. It can be easy to think of them as cramped because of the perspective of which we view them, but when you take into consideration that a nugget is a fully grown adult person, and one sin is like yay big, but we do see that they are pretty big in Wonderlab, though personally I think they'd be a bit larger in LobCorp. Shelter of the 27th of March has its own special little containment chamber, and it's the only Abno with one too, which is fishing. I mean, the thing is a room. Abnormalities are transported in from boxes. Did they like flat pack 27 and get like an IKEA guy to come in and fucking build them? How? Tiferet floor, the central command center, is a regal palace in the heart of the facility. Tiff's floor is gorgeous. In the hallways and the main room are steampunky electrical light bulbs and modern ceiling fans, a stark contrast to the subterranean fluorescent lights that occupy the Asaya floor. I'm a sucker for this kind of Victorian and Gothic Lolita fashion aesthetics in media. See Bloodborne, see Castlevania. So personally, I really jive with the whole palace theme going on here. Still doesn't change how weird it is though. Strange as a palace in your laboratory may be, it's not out of place. We've already had black holes and comically large roses. If you pick the floors in the canonical order, that is to say build hods before net sacks, it's a slow and gradual change into this more out there set piece. The entrance should say it all. Isaac here stands proud above the elevator entrance after getting what looks like a stab wound to the heart. The wound looks like another rose. Why is this a running theme? There are no doors in Tiferet sector either, just curtained archways that loom over the employees. On the bottom floor lies a golden cross, each arm embroidered with a fleur-de-lis. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but I don't care because it's French. A Star of David is presented in the middle, once again tying the Sephira all back to the Tree of Life that they're based on. You want me to point something out that you'll never unsee again? The middle section has a graphical oversight on the curtain. Bro, whoever was in charge of making this transparent was not having a good day. Either that, or they use the magic wand tool and it does that goddamn thing it always does. If you know, you know. But when you take away the floors and only leave the actual background, it appears to be a theatre with yet another tree. I know a certain someone who would get a kick out of this.
Can I blow the Tin Man?
Get the fuck.
The disciplinary team, led by Gabora, is a return to form for the more metallic labyrinth of the Asaya floor. The colours get duller here. While everything is drenched in red, it's a big reality check kick to the jaw after the whimsy of Tiff's floor. In lore, the disciplinary team are meant to be the fighters, the first responders to any actual brawl that breaks out, and the wear and tear of the solid metal walls reflects that. There's some Korean scribbling on the lower hallway with a fist beside it. There's actually hidden writing in most of the hallways, but I can't make heads nor tails of it. Hello, editing me here, so sorry for the audio quality. Turns out these scribbles are actually on their own layer from the hallway PNGs, which just makes me wonder even more why the abnormal numbers don't correspond to the different chambers. I don't know, somebody making a mod or something, it'll join the greats with stuff like today's ordeals. Even the pipes look aggressive, much bulkier than usual. Both Gabora and Chesed sectors are split into 2 floors to match with Tiferet's, but Gabora's does it in a pretty cool way. In the arch of the main room, you can see walkways intertwining, and it can be assumed that the top floor is just another walkway. No handrails though. There never is. There's some big old gears in the roof, like a clock tower. But Dracula ain't here though, he got scrapped in development. Laying smack dab in the middle of the bottom floor is the only colour that isn't a shade of red. The old Warp logo, baby! Thank God they changed it. This is the platform where the rabbits get teleported into the facility in times of emergency, and in Wonderlab, how abnormalities make their way in. It sticks out like a sore inverted thumb, but that didn't stop my dumb ass from not noticing it for my entire first 2 playthroughs. It's a really nice detail though, and I appreciate the build up to Warp in this series a lot, as I've made painfully clear. The welfare team have the inexact opposite colours to the disciplinary. Fishing, given how one is for getting rid of your problems, and the other for getting rid of your problems. Chesed's floor feels very ocean-like. I wonder why. The rocks strewn about the top layer look like coral from afar, and there's a big glass ceiling that has water sitting right on top. The refracting light reveals an interesting scene. A cave filled with abnormality boxes as seen by their number registrations. This must be where the excess or old abnos are stored, but they may also serve as backup energy sources since there's pipes coming out of the box. It's not like abnos need food or air, these are immortal beings, so it's a guessing game of what purpose these serve. Chessed's hallways have peeling wallpaper that reveal more of the deep sea outside. The welfare team is also beautiful, gives me the nostalgic kicks just looking at it. The ceiling fans from Tiferet floor are immediately gone and aren't present in Chesed or Geb's halls. They also both have the same cold metallic doors with no special feature, aside from the colour between them. Except for the door on the bottom right of Chesed's floor. That one is ethereal. Hey, top left one too. That one has scribbles beside it again, but I can actually make out the massive pesca. The rest of the writing just looks like scribbles. It's probably legible, but I'll leave that to the bilinguals. Pesca though is the Italian word for fishing, taking from the word pesca or pisc. It means fish. I sort of neglected to mention it, but in the background of every floor, there's another graphic. I guess to act as a space filler instead of just having solid black. They're all very pretty. Chesed's has a shattered pillar suspended in place from the water. It's a little hard to make out, but the cave illustrations are on their own layer and move differently from the player's perspective to give them the illusion of 3D graphics. This is something all three games do, with Limbus finally going whole hog with making the camera fully change perspective when you angle it up or down. It's one of the many adorable little evolutions present in this series. It just makes me smile with glee. Finally, down to the last third of the facility, and also the smallest, the Atziluth layer is home to Hakma and Bina, the two geriatrics of LobCorp. Bina runs the extraction team, and her slice of the company pie is rather dark. Not thematically, I'm talking literally, like Doom 3 dark. It's really hard to tell what I'm looking at here. What I can make out is the novella of text on the wall, brightly glowing in a soft yellow hue. It's still ineligible, but it is the same writing that appears on all of the Arbiter's pillar attacks in Ruina. The stone slabs act as stalagmites and tights that pierce through the cavern from every angle. It's the main room in the facility that looks underground. Sure, the other ones look like heavily fortified bunkers and a castle, but Bina's looks like a proper dark, dingy cave, unwelcoming and dangerous. Hakma, on the other hand, is completely alien. The remains of multiple colossal clocks lay in the distance, accompanied by a gate shaped like two wings. If you look closely, the biggest clock is White Knight's. For all intents and purposes, this looks like the aftermath of a fallen kingdom. The pattern of warning tape and the big O4 on the left wall are reminiscent of the containment chambers we house the Abnos in. I believe what we're looking at here is the ruins of the old LobCorp that Ayan and Ben used to run. And mixing Benjamin's delusions of grandeur and respect for Ayan, he began to see the corporation like an impenetrable kingdom, the literal wings acting as an entrance. In his mind, the old LobCorp headquarters was a castle, but even with it reduced to rubble, he still can't seem to let go of it. So it all melts together in a baroque clash of impossible architecture, with a goddamn lot of clocks. Can't beat the clock. Nope. Can't beat the clock. I mentioned a little bit ago how Yesod was one of two Sephiroth to have a unique redraw of their main room for their dialogue art, and Hakma is the other. In Hakma's cutscenes, he gets this radical floating clock tower with wings. But if you look in the background, gasp! The wing gate is gone! That's because it wasn't a gate. It's alive! Question mark? Maybe it's meant to represent the godliness of the corporation wings and their oppression in the universe of City. There's blood on the hands, so that's what I'm guessing. But other than the sick, biblically accurate clock tower, all the other small clocks are missing in this render. Look, I can understand Hakma getting a special background. He is extremely lore important and he's the best Sephiroth. Sorry, I don't make the rules. But Yesod is such an odd choice for a touch-up. I'm still hung up on it. In Hakma's hallway, a chunk of the wallpaper looks like cracked black glass. I racked my brain, but I can't think of the significance it might hold. Maybe it's dilapidation, or even just a visual bug. Regardless of that though, the Hakma's floor is my favourite of all the LobCorp sectors. It's cool, enough said. All the abnormality containment doors scattered around the hallways are a little bit off of the ground. I would assume this is to prevent any gaps from accidentally being made, and to add a teensy bit more security with a step, in case the Abno trips on the way out. But Hakma's are way up, like halfway up the wall. This man wasn't taking any chances. Another cute touch to all the hallways is, as you've probably noticed, these shelves of assorted knickknacks. They're not interactable and look the exact same in every single instance, but their presence is kind of funky. I appreciate we give the employees so many medkits, despite the fact they never use them. We've been on LobCorp for long enough, but we have one last pit stop before we can leave these cold heartless walls. The big man himself sitting pretty in the Keither sector. Ian's got one hell of an office setup when you first get in. He needs a carpet though, that's just real estate begging to be filled. And one pillow? I can tell you're lonely by the cabinet full of alcohol in your work office, but come on man, at least get two so the first pillow isn't lonely. Ian's a man for the pie charts, he really loves graphs. But if you've been trying to get the true ending in your playthrough and have completed all of the Sephiroth's core meltdowns, Ian's room begins to melt itself as the illusion breaks. I adore how grotesque it looks mid-transformation, with various veins and gnarly tumors growing on the architecture. The room is alive. The company motto, face the fear and build the future, can be spotted fragmented into two different pillars. A nice little touch when the player is so close to the finish line. The best detail though is the paintings of all the Sephiroth while they were still human, including what I think is Chessed's nervous system suspended in a metal box. Gross. And this dude in the middle just mean-mogging you. But finally, it finished its metamorphosis and became a beautiful butterfly. The stark contrast of the white and black is a real kick to the corneas after the previous scene, and it mixes the colours of its two contemporary Atzilet floors very nicely. All of the Sephiroth are lined up in order of their facilities. Enoch is still present, and Bina's is blurred out. Ian's still holding his immense, yet totally valid grudge. A lone table sits in the centre of the room, and above it, the signature Lobotomy Corporation logo melts away, a sign of things to come in like the next 10 minutes of gameplay. On day 50, it transforms into an elevator, with all the Sephiroth paintings now in place to shape out the facility itself. It leads to Carmen's floor, her nervous system suspended in time, forever trapped in the destroyed landscape of a nostalgic memory. Oh boy, that took a hot minute. Hey, let's do something fun. Let's look at the backgrounds from a really early build of LobCorp. Oh. Hey, you know, this guy's pretty creepy. I'd like to see him return someday. After LobCorp's corporate funhouse, the series decided to suplex the facility aesthetic into the pavement. And with Ruina's more jazzy tone, every Sephiroth got a total makeover, including their respective library floors. The library keeps the labyrinthic feel of the facility, but in a much more welcoming way. The lamp-lit warm glow of the main library halls is just so cozy. Shelves upon shelves are filled to the bursting with books made of light, but the halls are nothing compared to Angela's room. Winding, endless staircases illuminated by the light are caved in by titanic shelves as full as their hallway counterparts. The main table is how Angela and Roland view the city denizens during their respective cutscenes, and I like the mechanical look to it. Fits the outside of the library that we talked about earlier. Roland's floor doesn't have a story background, but it does have the most mindfucky battle arena. The floor of General Works has its battles take place on a bridge made entirely of books, surrounded by impossibly large spires of books, all within an incomprehensibly colossal bottomless pit of bookshelves. I can't stop singing Ruina's sense of scale praises enough. The library shapes its presence depending on the state of mind of the guests, and this is the perfect lore excuse to go fucking bonkers with the sheer impossibility of the fight scenes. And I feel like Ruina lives up to the expectations that come with such an opportunity. Malkuth's floor, the floor of history, takes its name pretty literally in a cute way. There's a bunch of books open and closed placed within glass display cases. It's a nice way to tie in the floor's actual use with its design. The floor looks like glass, though it's probably just super polished wood, since it's reflecting the three odd looking pillars scattered around. These three pillars all belong to the other members of the Isaiah floors, and we'll get to them in a second. Far in the back, it keeps the spirit of Angela's room alive with much more mahoosive shelves. This is the last time I'll mention it though, since they're pretty much present in every single floor. Malkuth's cutscene art looks no different from the hallways. It's kind of boring and basic, but that absolutely fits considering her role as an introductory Sephiroth, and it perfectly mirrors the basic laboratory look of the control team in LobCorp. Her ducky pen is still present as always on the table. Yesod's floor is a massively sudden change in aesthetic. It drops the old brown, time-torn library in favour of a bright purple neon cyberpunky look. A chandelier of gears and cogs hangs from the ceiling, which, as much as I'd love to call this some Oda level foreshadowing, it's not. This game was in early access for ages, and there's not a chance in hell they thought that far ahead with the background art. In retrospect though, it's a happy little accident. Far off, through a window, the neon city of the battle background can be seen. A cute touch to connect the two sceneries. But before we check that out, remember Yesod's special background from LobCorp? It happened again. We've got one where the shelves look messy and slightly empty, and another where they're stacked to the brim like every other floor. The lights here are also slightly brighter. Personally, I think the first one is a lot nicer. Something about the clutter makes it feel more lived in. But Yesod's whole character is that he's also an insane neat freak, so he would totally keep that shit tip-top shape. I'm probably the first person to ever voice a thought on the difference of these two, so let's just move on. The floor of technological studies is wicked. This is the neon city I'm talking about, baby. The constantly shifting gears in the background keeps the namesake of the floor, and the pillars of books are missing here, instead replaced by the city as a whole. Endless as far as the eye can see, but in the heart of it all sits a crescent moon chained down to a spiral building. Man, just looking at this again. If you ever played Ruina on a laptop that wasn't made for gaming before, then you know that this is like the single floor in the entire game that can't even run on low settings. They went so hard on Yes Odds Floor for no reason, and I'm all here for it. Hod's Floor of Literature reels the benchmarking back in, but still keeps the scale. Hod's Floor is so damn comfy, man. Oh, just looking at it makes me feel all warm and cozy, like I'm peering into a firelit cottage on a cold winter's day. The raindrop lights hanging from the ceiling remind me of a bedroom, oddly enough. It's like Hod's desperate want to make people feel safe in LobCorp has come to a boiling point in Ruina, and resulted in the one library floor that looks nice to visit. Big fan of the staircase bookcase, by the way. Impossible to use, but sick to look at architecture. That's the good stuff. Her cutscene art is just as warm. It's basically Malcuts again, but now lit by the funky light bulbs. The table has 3 seats and a pile of books on top. It can be safely assumed that these are the books from the book club that she has set up with the assistant librarians, and it's just so cute. The funkiness doesn't stop here though, as Netsek's floor, much like how it was in LobCorp, is where the supernatural really starts to peek itself in. The floor of art fits in perfectly. I have no better way to describe how well it works than just repeating myself. These rooms are figments of the Sephra and guests' imaginations, depending on who takes priority. So for Netsex to be a barely traversable mishmash mess, it just works. The dude doesn't care, and 9 times out of 10, he's too drunk to see straight, so yeah, he would draw something like that. And it's beautiful. Tiferet floor, the floor of natural sciences, loses the theatrical setting of LobCorp, but keeps the palace aesthetic. Now with the Masters of Spinjitzu, Tiferet's floor often gets overlooked, but despite losing her brother, the girl could not stop winning in the setting game. Water and lava separate the 2 parties at the bottom of the screen, which is a really cool touch. Her cutscene art is more the same old, except her floor is painfully bright. Please invest in some curtains, I beg. If Netsek's floor is not really caring enough to make a nice setting, so it just exists, Gabora's floor is not caring enough to make a nice setting, so she makes it miserable for everyone else. The floor of language is an inhabitable shithole. Shelves are smashed, with ripped up books acting as a homemade carpet. Gabora sits on this patchy, worn down couch, and her ashtray is just overflowing. Girl, you can literally make yourself a new chair with your mind. Just do it. And get some pillows while you're at it. I swear there's something in the water in this universe. It might just sound like I'm complaining, but the actual fight arena is spectacular. Real hell vibes, which is insanely suitable for the mind of the strongest colour that City ever knew. The city down here is pretty awesome. It's a catacomb of iron apartments. Or at least I assume they're iron. But that wouldn't make much sense in hell. Getting cooked alive in there. I haven't even mentioned the unmissable cauldron of pouring lava held up by the apartments. It serves as an awesome centerpiece in the battles that unfold here. Battles that do deserve to take place in hell, since that's where the Red Mist page is dragging any sorry bum you fight with her. I thank Project Moon every day for letting me play as a lore accurate colour. Thankfully, to combat Gabora's harshness yet again is Chesed. My man arrives in style. Keeping the water from his LobCorp appearance, the entire fight takes place in a submerged shipwreck, which is awesome enough on its own, but then you realise the floating scrapped cars in the far-off underwater city, and it all just plays off each other so beautifully. The shipwreck is bolted down by 2 ropes, in case you were curious of how it stayed in place. It's nice detail. I said Hod's floor seemed the most welcoming, but Chesed's is downright envy-inducing. Imagine living here. I'm not even talking about the assortment of endless entertainment, or the imported coffee beans. I am a tea guy after all. But I'm talking about the 2 pillows. Let's go, Chesed, you know what's up. Chesed's main room also looks down below to his fighting arena, but it's way cooler looking from up here. The sails aren't visible from the in-game fights, but you can spot them here, and it looks like an entire Kowloon-esque city was built upon the back of a gargantuan ship that sank. That's an incredibly unique idea that I hope gets revisited sometime in the future. I'd say whenever the story returns to the Great Sea, and don't worry, we'll get there soon enough. Bina's floor joins the cozy gang with her tea setup. Only 1 chair though, she doesn't care for visitors. Hod could take some notes for the star-shaped lights, they're really quite adorable. I like that Bina's room kinda looks like a cave, much like how it did in LobCorp. The set designers did a phenomenal job connecting the 2 games together in subtle ways like this. Her fight arena takes place on a bridge in the stars, far above the city below, making it look minuscule in comparison to the fight. This is a good way to show Bina's ego, her literal mental ego, not the equipment. Arbiters are the strongest enforcers in City, only tied with Claws. They're basically born into this position of power, so it makes total sense for Bina to see herself so ridiculously above everyone else in City, to the point of seeing herself as a god in the stars. In a more literal sense, it's the game's way of showing you how far you've come. Yesod's floor way back at the start of the game was just a bridge overlooking City, and now Bina's has you in space looking down on it, the crescent moon now unshackled and resting in the cosmos. And in a more literal sense, you unlock Bina in the part of the game called Star of the City. You are a literal Star of the City. Wow. Hakuma's fights take place in an actual clock tower this time. And hey, Dracula is here too. He made it twice. And there's a big old pendulum that swings to and fro. Having actual background animations is a huge difference. Imagine how hard they'd go in LobCorp. The black hole floating up and down doesn't count, come on man. I can't say much for the floor of religion. It's cold, it's clean, and it fits the best Sephiroth to a T. It's got a colour scheme that is the exact opposite of Bina's, with Keither's grey acting as a mix of the two. We've been here before. The vast majority of your fights in this game will take place within these floors, but there are a select few guest and special fights that emotionally overpower your librarians and shape the battleground as they see fit. Now there is a lot, so I'm only going to mention the ones that stand out to me. Fights that get treated to a special Millie or Dark Fantasy Studio song always have an accompanying set piece. The first two that the game throws at you simultaneously are Love Town, as I previously gushed about, and Philip. Philip's arena takes the shape of a coliseum. It's a little bland when you compare it to even the early librarian floors, but what makes it so special is its implementation. Up until now, the only special backgrounds the player has seen is in abnormality fights, which makes sense, they're in-house battles with the books. But Philip is the first guest to take the reins from the librarian and completely take control. He is also like the first boss fight, so this is where the tutorial ends and the game really begins. It's a pretty special experience to see the background shift for the first time. Dark Fantasy's drums starting up and the heart-sinking realization that this game is no longer about intercepting clashes. It's about surviving what the opponent is throwing out. It's a magical feeling. Throughout the course of the battle, the background will slowly get more engulfed in flames until eventually an orange glow envelops all and lava pours from the archways. A progressive background was also new to this fight, so it does its job at making you feel uneasy. Like the background is preluding to a big scary attack. Which it does, 40 roll baby. The rematch with Philip, now known as the Crying Children, I promise you if this is your first exposure to this game, it makes total sense. Takes place in the same rustic arena, now completely crumbled to the ground and the one solid bridge shattered to fragments. When you first fight Philip, it's like his fight or flight reflex kicked in. He realised so many have died to protect him, so he throws all fear of death away and decides to stand on his own 2 feet. The Crying Children is after he suffered humiliating defeat and had a mental breakdown causing him to distort. The background, the fighting grounds in which he once fancied himself a hero, a physical representation of his ego, is now shattered, crumbled to dust with his mental state. To double up on his guilt of all his loved ones dying, as the fight progresses, the lava from before doesn't return. Instead, the arena gets flooded with straight up blood. This is all some pretty sick environmental storytelling, but even on its own, the art really pops with the Crying Children. The Shattered Bridge is so damn cool! But there's another boss fight with a mentally distraught pyromancer on a bridge, and that's the one and only Zhao. Zhao's arena takes place on the wall of a fortress under siege. You can see it in flames at a far off distance. The real standout for Zhao though, is that damn sun. Man, I can't tell if it's sundown or sunrise, but somehow it makes the fight 10 times more stressful. Zhao is a real difficulty curve in the game. She's one of, if not the hardest boss in the game. But I'm gonna chalk most of that up to this damn background making her feel like she's the final boss. At first, I thought these spears in the ground were stuck up by fighters below, but then I realised their swords stuck in the visible ground too. Much like how Philip was the last standing of his office, Zhao was the final Liu member in your way. This is her final stand, and in her mind, the library is a warfront, a castle that needs to be burned to the ground. Yan is the other special fight in Star of the City, and spoiler alert, his isn't much easier. When he discovers that the index prescripts are being printed by a machine, his worldview shatters. This machine is awesome, by the way, just a massive typewriter. It's so old-fashioned and futuristic at the same time. How did Project Moon make printing paper spooky? That's impressive. Yen distorts like Philip, but his fight takes place in an azure abyss. Dense groups of strings run all over, and I think there's writing on them, though it's really hard to make out. And this massive white sheet that covers the horizon, I believe is meant to be a prescript. Or it could just be an artsy touch. Either way, Yan's arena is much harder to connect to his character than Philip and Zhao, but stylistically speaking, it's radical. Helps that it appears to be underground too, since the last place Yan visited before he kicked it was the prescript sewers. I can't really put it into words, but the background just fits his fight song, Children of the City, so well, you know? Like, it's really damn blue and mysterious, and somehow that just fits Vaporwave for me. Is that weird to connect a colour to a music genre? Purple, black and blue, they're my Vaporwave colours. Getting a little too happy though. Did someone say horror? The Black Silence comes in swinging with some smoke war art. Oh baby. So this right here is theorized to be the smoke war monster that the Black Silence and Salvador saw. The one that causes so much disgust from just viewing. He always looks like Dr. Snap to me. I don't know, something about him. So it's safe to also theorize that this area is meant to be the home of said monster. And it's a gorgeous sight. Just a big bouquet of mixing steam pipes, unable to tell where they begin and end. And this thing is high up too. These black rectangles, I'm pretty damn sure are meant to be skyscrapers, as this red glow and black building aesthetic is prevalent throughout just about every bit of smoke war art we've gotten in this series. Would also make sense for it to be up high since you fight on a walkway, this time with railings. See, I knew someone had some humanity in City. Gavura is in shambles right now. The final arena you fight the Black Silence in is a grey abyss. You've beaten him to the ground for about 3 phases up until this point, so the dude is probably mentally shattered. These black spots may look like smoke at first glance, makes sense given his history with the smoke war. When you look really close, oh nice, corpses. This isn't your granddaddy's abyss, this is a battleground. The ground isn't cracked for style, it's from all the fighting that took place here. Xiao thinks of her fallen comrades as weapons in the ground. She's fully manifested her ego and is fighting the good fight, but the Black Silence doesn't give him such honour. There's just mountains of corpses everywhere. His guilt, his regret, every life he's taken adding up on his mental until he's on a knife's edge from distorting. He slaughtered so many that he can't even visualise the faces of the people he's killed anymore. All just coagulating into a panorama of faceless husks. Once again, this is something I didn't really catch on my first playthrough of Ruina. I thought this was just smoke or an aesthetic thing and I didn't look much further. But when I finally, literally stopped and looked, it changed my viewpoint on the fight entirely. But the Black Silence's third phase, now that one is a certified library classic. Taking place in the same arena as seen in one of Bina's Abnormality cutscenes, the third phase takes place in a room lined corner to corner, floor to roof with human blood vessels, all caused by a certain blood-red night. Now this is some deliciously haunting art. The Mountains of Frowning Corpses is a more story-based site, letting you see into the Silence's mind, as well as confirming that yes, this is the final phase, but this is the third phase of a 4-phase fight, and it really just makes you feel hopeless. From the jump of the smoke war immediately to a gory scene of just death, it's hollowing. Oh, but I love it. Elena got cheaped out of any sort of special background specifically for her fight. I mean, hey, all of the ensemble did. So it's damn nice to see more of her happy home design. It obviously traumatized Mr. Silence too, since I mean, how else would he remember it in such detail? All of his backgrounds are just delicious. Mwah, chef's kiss. But I really need to swap the tone up. Pick something a little happier. Oh yeah, the circus is in town. Dark Fantasy Studios were cooking up straight fire when they made their theme. And, the Distortion Reverb ensemble is just colours. Very pretty colours. It does a good job being incomprehensible since, you know, this is like 7 or 8 people per floor, but more realistically like 30 people in the same room, most of which are distorted, all battling for emotional control of the library, so it all mashes together in just bright neon lights. And pillars made of people. This is a worryingly reoccurring trend. Project Moon, are you okay? Anyways, look at the stars. Ain't they just the prettiest? You again! Every single abnormality in this game has a unique background to their fight, but unlike the guests, most of the abno arts are less detailed. Like Porcubus, for example. It doesn't need to be anything special, and it works. It's just a tad bit empty, and I wish there was a little bit more added. Though I'm stumped myself when I try to think of what could be. Pinocchio, though, no, that's a banger background with a banger song. Best song in LobCorp, don't at me. Pinocchio's also does what it needs to, yes, but it feels like a lot more love has gone into it than the others. Big fan of the colour choice used here. The beiges make it feel very, how do I put it? Old? The fight looks like it takes place in an attic with forgotten dolls, and I'm 99% sure that's what they were going for. What are these coming out of the floorboards though? Nails? Were we shrunk down to his size, or was everything scaled up to us? Also, Pinocchio is teensy compared to his brothers in the back. Don't worry, champ, you'll get your growth spurt soon. I feel like the lack of detail in these is a design choice. The fights have a very scratchy film grain filter over them, almost like a memory, and we are fighting these abnormalities straight out of books, so I think they're going for a storybook look. Fairy Festivals is extremely simplistic with huge strokes of solid colours on the trees while still looking a little cartoony. Scorch Girl's entire story is based on the poem Little Match Girl, which, spoilers, is about a presumably homeless little girl who dies from hypothermia in a snowy city. While the Ruina depiction lacks the morbidness and the snow, it does add in citizens who seem entirely uncaring of the fight taking place beside them. Whether this girl dies or not is of no interest to them. Except for like these two to the right, but they don't count. This one is positively perplexed. That's quite a stretchy comparison, but I hope you can gather what I'm trying to say here. The old cozy look of the town mixed with the picturesque night sky is all very children's bookish. Though, please don't read Little Match Girl to your kid unless you want them to have like genuine trauma. Now, I'd love to keep giving examples on why I love the picture book arts, but a happy teddy bear exists. Of all the abnormalities, why is the neck-snapping teddy bear the one in a war zone? Its lore in LobCorp doesn't mention any war. Why is he a Nocturne Totem? I don't get it, and I love it. Dream of a Black Swan also takes place in a war, the Smoke War to be precise, as their LobCorp lore alludes to the orphan child living in an area of the city that was covered in grey fog. Grey fog, with this red lighting, yeah, we all know what's going on here. Black Swan's story is damn depressing, as it's just about these 7 kids being caught up in the Smoke War without realising what's really happening. You almost feel bad crushing them to a pulp. Almost. Heart of Aspiration. Do I even need to say anything? Mwah, gorgeous. The 3 birds get some really cute art. Very rough sketches make up solid black trees on a yellow shaded skyline. It fits the folklore nature to Apocalypse Bird's true form, and very nicely matches the little storybook pages that would appear during their formation in LobCorp. Today's shy look is surprisingly jolly. This is the sunniest scene in probably all of Ruina, and that alone makes it the most unnerving. It's nice here. Too nice. And it's honestly just uncanny. I'm not used to lush countrysides in Ruina. Bring me back to thick fogs and grey cityscapes. The floor realisation version, now that's the Ruina I'm used to. The house in the background has been tarnished and has tarps of pure flesh disgustingly draped over it. No more sunny skies, just a pure crimson hellscape. The home sweet home. Letitia brings an adorable set piece with her. It's really colourful and cutesy while still keeping a solid feeling of dread. There's a lot of little heart shapes dotted around the walls, but any returning LobCorp players will know that these are the little witch's gifts. The eyes belong to the spider within said gifts, but even knowing that fact, there's still a nice little air of mystique to this art that has never left me. It's one of the Abno fights that feels like you really did just fall headfirst into the mind of a creature that we can't comprehend, yet without getting all too serious about it, and keeping the weird abnormal charm of the series. Speaking of creepy crawlies, Spider-Bud's background is as spooky as it is silly. The Spider-Bud in LobCorp is a singular being. It's the mother of all the tiny Spideys seen on the floor. So why is there so many of them here? Unless they're all just like fully grown adults, but we were led to believe that the mother was the only one who looked like this. I'm not sure, because Singing Machine has a similar thing going on with his army. No, that's not the right word. With his choir of singing machines. Speaking of choirs, Silent Orchestra finally got the center stage. His fight reeks, but his art is adequately minimalistic. It's only got 2 colours, much like himself, and it accurately gives the feeling of a performance on stage, in a game where all the battles are presented as stage plays. And he's got his own curtains, so he's doing like a play inside a play. I'm throwing tomatoes right now. Tifret's was better anyways. Chessede's abnormalities are all themed around the Wizard of Oz, so the settings of his floor realisation follow the journey that Dorothy does in the original story. Of course, this is Project Moon we're talking about, so Dorothy's friends are all demons straight from hell itself. Scarecrow's rumble takes place in a wheat field, and it always sort of bugged me that we just stand perfectly on top of the wheat. I get it, you know, triple layered fight arenas were only introduced with Limbus, but nah man, this broke my immersion, game ruined, decimates my head. The entire sun is covered by the wheat, but when you take the bottom half of the arena away, the sunset on its own, it's quite beautiful. The same can't be said for Warm-Hearted Woodsman. To fit with his gnarly man mixed with machine aesthetic, Woodsman's entire arena is like Letitia's, just without all the whimsy. The trees here are presumably stuffed with human meat. This is meant to mirror the story of Woodsman seen in LobCorp. He gets the warm-hearted part of his name from the fact that he exclusively kills humans and stuffs their freshly cut hearts into his own chest, in a desperate pursuit to have a real heart of his own, like the original Wizard of Oz story. The end of his codex entry says, quote, "Following this, the woodsman started to cut down people instead of trees." So that should explain why the trees here look like they're alive, eyeballs and all. Woodsmen can distinguish the difference between humans and trees, but what's the point when they're all for cutting anyways? They might as well just be the same. A more grim way of perceiving the trees could be that they're hollow and he's stuffing them with hearts to use for later. But that wouldn't make much sense. They'd go cold, and he's the warm-hearted woodsman for a reason. A little bit off topic, but when looking at images of the Tin Man on Google, this dude has gotten some fire redesigns throughout fiction. Like, this is how he looked originally, right? And then Project Moon made him super haunted grotesque. Castlevania just straight up gave him a machine gun. The road home is a 2-for-1 fight, bringing in Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion. In the horizon sits the Emerald City, which looks radical. It's got a futuristic twist to its design to make it more mirror the city that we're used to. Impossible archways and bridges connect inconceivably large skyscrapers. It's exactly like how we saw Warp's architecture earlier. Lovely blue sky too, just as uncanny as Shy looks. And of course, the actual fight takes place right on top of Elton John. Honestly, shout out How's the copyrights expiring? You think when he wrote Oz that Mr. Baum thought that Dorothy would be flinging her house at librarians? Rest in peace, Frank Baum, you would have loved Wonderlab. Story-wise, I can't make heads nor tails from Ozma's fights, so I'm gonna skip trying to give it any meaning, but this background is still sick. Looks like we're fighting under a bridge in the Emerald City. You can kinda screw up the illusion of the arches reflecting if you zoom in and out really fast, but I appreciate the effort. Finishing off this little Oz escapade is the adult who tells lies, based on the actual Wizard of Oz. In the book and in the movies, he's a grumpy old man, but in Ruina... We're deep in the Emerald City now, so no more sunny skies, Jim Bob. You're inside Oz's palace. With like 3 different shades of green and the solid colour black, they somehow made an entire palace interior looks like it has depth and detail, and it's glorious. I especially love the floor. Anytime they add extra detail to the ground, you know it's going to be a firefight. And I mean, Oz's fight is alright, but the visuals are definitely the spectacle here. The huge emerald pillars behind Oz's throne are connected by little bridges too. These pillars could be a representation of the entire Emerald City, Oz putting them behind her all to literally show that the entire city is under her control, but who knows? I don't. I just appreciate good floor polish. The word janitor has become a running gag for Warp employees, but there is some shiny ass floors in City. There is actual janitors out there, lurking, and certainly not cleaning up the back streets. Keeping up the theme of Gabora's floors being pure violence, her abnormalities are all blood hunters. She even has 2 Aleph level threats on her floor, for crying out loud. Big Bad Wolf and Red Riding Hood both duke it out in dusky forests. Red Hood's is just a forest with trees with no leaves. There's not really much to mention here, except the crimson glow of the Crescent Blood Moon variant is jaw-dropping. Wolf's is a bit more on the nose, though I'm pretty sure we all know the story of Red Riding Hood. A little girl who brings a basket of apples to her granny just to see that she's been eaten by a big bad wolf. Well, Ruina's wolf ate the granny and ruined her home insurance to boot. I can't blame him though, I wouldn't take any chances against Red Hood either. But did Granny really put up that much of a fight? Was she a werewolf hunter or something? Like, Jesus Christ, you obliterated her cottage. Wolf's background looks, normally I'd say kinda sorrowful, with the pale blue moonlight falling on the murder scene. It's framed to look more sad than anything, but when the blood moon hits, it's like a thematic flip of the switch. Suddenly the wolf seems much more threatening than ever, but you feel like a badass monster hunter of your own. It's a damn shame that it's so blurry in the actual in-game fights. Sure, it adds some depth and sense of scale, but this art is so pretty, man. Come on, let me see it all. You fight Red Hood before Big Bad Wolf, but you do fight the wolf along Red Hood in Red's fight. I was maybe thinking that this is the same night, given that Red's is a crescent moon and Wolf's is a full, so Wolf's is like later in the night when the clouds part, and their forests look fairly similar in colour, but Wolf's forest has fully flourished trees, and Red's are barren of life. So these are likely 2 separate nights altogether. Gabora's 2 Alephs, our mountain of smiling bodies, had nothing there, both of which bring gruesome scenes depicting their escapades on LobCorp. Starting with mountains, a lone empty door sits centre stage with mysterious black gunk pouring out from every which way. Mix this with the smears of even more gunk and blood all over the hallway and even on the roof, and it's safe to assume that Mountain just kinda rolled through here, crushing and killing anyone and everyone who got in his path. Have you ever punched a juice box or a Capri Sun like really hard and then one side bursts and it all comes flying out? I kind of assumed the same happened here, but in a much more morbid fashion to get all the blood on the roof, since Mountain is kinda titchy here. Look, you can even see him flattened on the ground. It's honestly kind of goofy, I can't take these guys seriously. Nothing there is infinitely more threatening. This thing is already a tumorous, disgusting parasite that shouldn't feasibly exist. So to have it infect the very walls of the facility, to stare you down with eyes bigger than your own body from every angle and watch your every twitch, it's a little spooky. It was never explicitly given the ability to amalgamate with the walls in LobCorp, but it's something I think definitely fits here. Given that we are going into the Abno's worlds, it's just so cool and it harkens back to Lovetown's equally as grody design. Remember how I pointed out the yellow and black warning tape earlier? Well, you can see it on the left side of the floor here, showing that we are inside a containment chamber and he hasn't broken out just yet. Now, a really nice touch is that it's on the left side, as I just said. It's an adorable nod to the original chamber art from LobCorp, but thematically, it's telling us that we're the abnormalities and nothing there's mind. These are still living creatures. Nothing there is equally as confused with us as we are with him, so to have the player's party take the spot of an abnormality being researched for once, it's a really humbling revelation. One theory I do have is that the scene this background is depicting is when an employee gets their skin ripped off by nothing there. In LobCorp, when he kills a worker, the entire cell gets covered up by a pancreas, I think. We never see what happens on the inside, but using organs to cover it up gives me the feeling that he does engulf the entire cell in himself. Who knows what he can actually do? This guy can shapeshift, and at that point, the sky's the limit. The amount of deep gashes on the wall and ground also lead me to believe that this either isn't his first rodeo, or that said employee put up a real good fight before succumbing. Gabura's last Abno has my personal favourite background of the Ruina Abno bunch. Nosferatu is a little lame, and his fight is like deathly easy since you just unlock the Red Mist page, but his arena taking place on a moonlit lake in front of his labyrinthic castle is... oh, it is so beautiful. The obvious comparison here is Castlevania, but I mean, come on, look at this thing, it screams Dracula. One-off settings like this that have nothing to do with City and look entirely unique are genuine treats. The spear effect that acts as a reflection too, it all just comes together to make one banger wallpaper. Considering Nosferatu was cut from LobCorp late into development, it's wholesome to see him get so much extra love and care in Ruina. Shows that Project Moon really did regret leaving him on the cutting room floor. Price of Silence and Silent Girl were in the exact same situation too, and both of them also got incredible amends. Silence keeps up the trend of abnormalities cloning themselves, while Silent Girls is a colossal palace fit for a boss. Very similar to Tiferet from LobCorp. Hokuma's floor really went all in on the minimalism, which does wholeheartedly fit him. Blue Star sits in a hollow black void, while White Knight is the exact opposite, fighting in pure white. Presumably his heaven? These look like clouds, so it makes sense. But Burrowing Heaven is the coolest of the pack. His fight also just takes place in a pure white void, but he physically makes up for it. You're fighting in and around Burrowing Heaven himself. Every root you see entangled together is a part of his body. It's just a tad cosmic horror. Like, this guy's size is so beyond our comprehension that he fills an empty void. But it's also pretty metal. Make this an album cover. We have hung around LobCorp and the library for way too long now. How does the other half live? And by that, I mean, how do the guests live? Most of the guests we invite from Ruina are fixers, mercenaries of the city, but even the strongest merc needs a place to call home. The offices shown in Ruina only appear briefly when they're needed, but they still have a lot of care put into them. The Kane office is a literal office. It's literally just a boardroom for investors to talk in, which, I mean, yeah. Nemo is a money-grubbing bastard, of course he'd always hang around in his boardroom. What's in the box though? Nemo could be hiding anything in there. The Dawn office run by Salvatore live in a cozy old-fashioned home. They even have a phonograph. This fits, mostly because Salvatore himself is a bit of a fossil, but he's also great friends with Mr. Bloodborne and his Victorian backup. I'm not sure how else to phrase it, the dude just looks like he owns a phonograph. Or maybe it's Yuna's and she just needed to listen to Hosier on vinyl because it's authentic. The Wedge office, run by Oscar, care not for home design and instead like to show off their namesake. Sharp weapons all proudly displayed around a meeting table. Plenty of framed pictures too. If there's one of Salvatore and Oscar in there, that could be pretty adorable. Old Man Yowie in my card game? More likely than you think. The She Association's office looks like a jail cell. It's just so cold. But they also are the most overworked and one of the most dangerous fixer offices in cities, so I can't see them caring much for material goods. Can you imagine though, like 2 of the fixers in a stationery store, their one assignment for the day not being to kill anyone, but instead to find like 100 identical black and grey binders to fit the company's aesthetic. Yun's office is a shithole. It's a dilapidated old dirty apartment filled with trash, and the company logo is fading away on the window, no one bothering to redraw it. It's fair enough that it's so downtrodden since this is an early game fight, but come on guys, if you want to make it big then it starts with a cool setup. See, the Streetlight office, get it? They're presented much nicer, much cleaner, but still not fully over the top like the Dawn office just yet. The Streetlight office strikes a great balance. It gives the vibes of a ragtag group of delinquents just trying to make ends meet. We get treated to yet another delicious view of the neon lit nighttime city. God, this shit is so beautiful. Please, Project Moon, bring the city design back. I'm begging you, man. Now, there's Y office. That's professional right there. There's Y offices, for all intents and purposes, are basically just police stations scattered around city. They are much more organised than their counterparts, and it shows even in how much cleaner one room of the place looks. Which, yeah, isn't a really fair comparison when this is one room of his Y office building, and this is the entirety of Yun's office. Keep going, pal, I believe in you. Liu's office has always slightly bothered me. The perspective is a little whack, so it makes the candle look much closer to the curtain than it actually is. And I know Liu was the fire group, so it would be in character for the office to go up in flames, but it's always been something I really can't unsee. Phenomenal cityscape view though. Hana Association are the big dogs, the #1 fixers in the entirety of city, and they're the ones who make the rules, designating titles like colour and so on. As such, their office feels very alien. It's so much cleaner, sanitised and different from any other place we've seen in city. Even as an onlooker in a cutscene, I feel unwelcome here, like it's just too high above me. It's also pretty literally high up, as I'm pretty sure this is the highest up view from within City itself that we've seen in this series. Not counting Bindle's floor, of course, since that's in our imagination. It's another tiny subtle detail that reinforces to the player that these guys are the real deal and you should be deathly afraid of the fight to come. They're literally higher above anything else you fought so far, and your ass just killed a colour and an ego. And then you whip out Red Mist. God, I love this game. Not an office, but I wanted to mention it anyways. Pierre's Bistro is the restaurant ran by my two favourite psychopaths. The dining hall is a little barren, but behind those curtains and inside the red light is where the magic happens. Pierre's Bistro is nothing special, but it doesn't have to be. It is, however, one of our first tastes into regular city interiors in Ruina. It pretty much set the precedent for designs to come. But a fun little comparison is between Pierre's bar and the bar shown in the bad ending when Roland's old friends are conversing. Ruina was developed over the course of about 2 to 3-ish years, so it's pretty cool to see the visual difference in art from the beginning and end of that cycle, and how far the artists have come. You can take your fancy pub and keep it though. I'm still a Pierre meat pie loyalist. I'm slowly running out of stuff to talk about, so let's round this video off with the most standout part of Limbus Company. The Great Sea, as seen in Cantos 4.5 and 5. This pair of chapters in Limbus is when they really took advantage of the fact we're on a road trip, by ditching the road and going into the ocean. Which, before we go any further, fun fact! Mephistopheles is actually split into 2 different images, one behind the windows and the actual interior of the bus. This helps give the 3D effect seen in the game's cutscenes, much like the cavern exteriors from LobCorp. Old habits die hard. This is a cool detail to note because by swapping images in and out, you can make your own custom Mephisto scenes, albeit with really wank lighting. But the option's there. Canto 4.5, My Limbus Golden Child, takes place in the swamp on the shore of the Great Sea. Its beach is a diseased green, filled with heaps of pollution and scraps that have washed ashore. This is still technically in the back streets, since there's a visible wall dividing the swamp from U-Corp's nest. Sunshine again. There's a ton more sun in Limbus than Ruina, so it's not as scary here, but bring back Elton John and I'm shivering in my boots. I know, Limbus players can call their game hard and whatever, but oh god, the second they bring back Road Home, you're gonna know what true fear was. At night, when the grill out front is flaming, U-Corp's beach is vacant. Now you can only see the lit up city skyline. Isn't it all a little green? Like K-Corp I get, the entire goddamn corporation is green and white, so it makes sense for their nest to be lit up like this. But U-Corp being green and bluish makes me just a little worrisome that Project Moon are trying to sweep the neon pinks and purples from Ruina under the rug. Of course, this is just some tiny buildings in the background for one scene, so there probably wasn't that much consideration gone into them, but it's just a little thing I wanted to mention. The Molar Office's boat workshop has a really wholesome feel in this wasteland. The inside is all cluttered and messy under way too bright fluorescent lights and gives off the vibes of being in a grandparent's garage. You can almost smell the gasoline and sawdust in this image. Even the aforementioned grill at night being the only light in the entire surrounding area leaves it feeling more desolate than it already is, yet homely at the same time. This mess of shipping containers and wires is what someone still calls a house, and that's oddly serene. Once we finally sail the 28 seas, the chapter really begins to show its true colours. Canto 5 is when Limbus's art direction and world building peaked. I know I said Canto 2's was also incredible, but it's incredible from a story standpoint. 5's is just pure eye candy. And I could be saying that because it's the last main chapter I played, but I truly believe that nothing else they have done since could top it. So the main background art you're going to see in this chapter is on Mephisto's deck. They all come in different flavours of weather. You want sunny, slightly clouded, slightly misty, swampy, stormy, pink, sunset, green or super stormy, we got them all. If Mephi isn't your speed, then don't worry, we have one in rowboat, cloudy, death, green and stormy as well. But where this canto shines the brightest is in the city within a city. U-Corp's metropolis of shipping containers, Port Merlin, an artificial island in the ocean and the hub of commerce for all of the Great Sea. This is the last time I'll glaze it, I promise, but look at the sheer scale of the entire island. It's breathtaking. The chimney that the entire town is built around has such global warming speedrun amounts of smoke pouring out because that's what's powering the entire ship. That's right, ship. This entire chunk of U-Corp's backstreets is one big moving boat that can traverse the Great Lake. Remember the idea foreshadowed all the way back to Chestnut's floor that I wanted to see become a reality? It's here, now. A closer look into the inner workings shows that the containers are way more dense than the overview lets on, with them stacking on top of each other with various staircases and boardwalks roughly connecting them. It takes the Kowloon influence of the mainland and puts it through a drug way worse than crack. Fishing. It's so unique, you know? Even the run-down, decrepit parts of Maryland feel lived in. Old, dilapidated walkways and doors signify that someone cared enough to build and put these here. This is a weirdly sweet, super-duper tight-knit community of scumbag pirates and seafarers. But you won't find the pirates out under the sunny skies. No. They're too busy in the nightclub. Built underneath the city grounds and yet even more shipping containers is where all the pirates hang while staying in port. I presume this is the absolute bottom of Maryland too, since the floor looks to be wooden. Underneath that is probably the inner machinery of the boat itself, stuff only engineers would be interested in. The interior of the club has the grated container walls present pretty much entirely throughout, and different floors and rooms are separated by even more containers on the inside. It's awesome and really gives off the vibe of a slimy den of crime that you just feel unwelcome in. The battle backgrounds make the club feel leagues larger than it looks in the cutscenes. This is likely just a perspective choice, but it works in the club's favour. It frames it as this rat's nest underneath the regular port. Not wanted, but too valuable to get rid of. Eventually the Sinners leave Maryland Port, and I miss it already, and I desperately hope to see what they have in store for the other 4 ports. Half of me hopes they're the same container-built metropolis with some differences, and the other half hopes for entirely new looks, but we have to wait and see. As I mentioned in my horror video, the desolate aftermaths that the Sinners find themselves in of the LobCorp oil rig and the cruise ship are hauntingly well designed. But at the end of the canto, you find yourself inside of the great big whale, and you traverse the Titan's insides as if it were a dungeon. The lighting, the colours, the slimy viscous goo everywhere, it's also nauseating. Dimly lit hallways of pure blubber, it's ugh, but it works so well. It's a given that the game will have to return to its status quo at the end of the chapter, but the art direction inside the whale genuinely fills me with despair, as if there was no way out of here and you're just gonna die inside this fleshy labyrinth. The white veins are a disease that kill basically everything it touches, and they're prevalent throughout the entirety of the whale's insides. Pequod Town basically being the centre of the small little worlds, it's hopeless and gross in not the cutest ways possible. And that's about all I have in me for now. I have seen some snippets of what lies in later Limbus, like Peacorp's warp station. Firstly, oh baby, yes, keep warp trains massive, it's perfect. And secondly, I really dig the Anne Orlando looking architecture of P-Corp. It's extremely baroque, it's really pretty. But that's a review for another day. Eventually, when Mere Salt's chapter drops, or when we finally get cowboy fixers. Still waiting. Oh, so patiently. I'm sorry if I repeated myself a lot in this video, but there's only so many ways I can point at the coolest thing ever and be like, yeah, this is sweet. Because the settings and backgrounds, I believe, are painfully overlooked for just how perfect they are. If you made it this far, thank you very much. But also I hope I managed to point out some cute details that you never noticed before, as I had an incredibly jolly time researching and writing this script. Once again, please consider subscribing for more Project Moon content, and leave a like to support my useless endeavours. I'll see you all in however many months when I upload, I don't know, Project Moon's freakiest feat or something.